Good morning, everyone. Welcome to our webinar today. My name is Sarah O'Leary and I'm from Myosh. The title of the webinar today is What Can We Learn from Two Middle-Aged Men, Their Tinny and Neuroscience about Speaking Up Regarding Safety. Lloyd Castro has been a psychologist for 25 years, consulting to industry Australia-wide in the areas of leadership, safety, people and team performance. He has delivered training and consultancies in a variety of environments, from the workshop floor to underground, offshore facilities, rail, remote mining sites, as well as corporate boardrooms. He pragmatizes delivery of his training into user-friendly language, and his approach is strongly influenced by positive psychology and neuroscience. As the managing director of Working Life People Solutions, they deliver a national EAP service, injury management programs, and specialised people/organisational development consultancies. So with that, thank you for joining us. Over to you, Lloyd. Thank you.
Cheers. Thanks, Sarah, and thanks to the Myosh group. Yes, it is a mouthful of a title. So what do two middle-aged men at Tinny and Neuroscience have to do with speaking up about safety? Okay, so this is my brother-in-law, Anthony. And in fact, it's actually his 54th birthday today. So happy birthday, Anthony. Last year, Anthony suggests to me out of the blue, we buy a tinny. So I say, yep, mate, great idea. And you can see the tinny on the right-hand side. It's called the Old George, named after our father-in-law who recently passed away. So that brought much satisfaction to our partners. The interesting thing is neither of us have had any boating experience before. So 2 weeks later, we buy a tinny, and as part of the sale, we receive about 10 minutes worth of instruction on this said tinny. After the 10 minutes of instruction, Anthony suggested, how about we take the boat out for a spin now, given we've just received these instructions fresh in our brain. So I thought, that's not a bad idea, mate. Let's go. So now we've successfully found a boat ramp, negotiated reversing the trailer, and really happy that we achieved that. Got the boat in the water, and off we go. We're kind of feeling great at the moment. Then we see a boat coming toward us. Anthony says to me, left or right? And I said to him, let's go right, mate. And as you boaties know, that was the right decision. We're feeling even more confident now. So as we turn the boat around, because it's my turn to drive back in, we hit a sandbar. And I say to Anthony, hold on, mate, I'll jump out. So I do exactly that. I jump out of the water, not worrying about turning off the propeller. So I'm in shin deep of water as I start to push the boat back into deeper water. By now, Anthony's pulled the motor up, but the water has suddenly got deep and I've lost hold of the boat. Next thing I know, I'm fully clothed, swimming after the boat with Anthony in it. And I look up and Anthony and the boat have got stuck on another sandbar across from where I was. And yes, you guessed it, Anthony's jumped out to push the boat back toward me in deeper water. All of a sudden, Anthony's in shoulder deep water, and you can see Anthony's a little bit taller than me, with the boat floating away in an increasingly fast current, and he's just holding on. At this point in time, I'm saying to him, don't let go, mate, don't let go. Also, at that point, we both look up and we see a larger boat coming toward us. And I'll never forget the look in his eyes, as I'm sure he'll never forget the look in my eyes. By a bit of luck, Anthony expertly pushes the boat towards a pylon where it stops long enough for both of us to try to get in. Stupidly, riddled with panic, fear, and excitement, we both try to get in on the same side at the same time. In probably the only piece of logic demonstrated that day, one of us stops and lets the other get on first. Now we're both on, and as this boat passes, thinking, God knows what, we give them a wave and signal that everything's okay. Now, I've given you a happy ending to this misadventure, but really, it could have happened, it could have finished a number of ways. So this is where the story ends today, and But what I wanted to do is to use this story as a backdrop as to why two professionals who are not particularly shy of being assertive or outspoken. Anthony's an optometrist. I'm a psychologist. We both do presentations. Um, why we didn't speak out about safety, why none of us actually called it. Okay, so where I thought we'd start is we'd start with the brain. And despite our respective partners' views, we both do have brains, okay? As do we all. So before we start talking about the brain, I want you to think about, what do you think its primary purpose is? What do you think its primary purpose is? And I'm sure most of you have got the right answer, okay? Essentially, at its core, the brain's purpose is to keep us safe. Every moment of every day, our brain scans the environment for danger. Is it safe or is it dangerous? In talking about the brain, it's obvious, but it's a awfully complex piece of our body. However, essentially, I want to talk about three parts: the triune brain. And you can see here, the triune brain is made up of the prefrontal cortex, the limbic system, and the reptilian brain. Okay? So, firstly, the oldest part of the brain, the reptilian brain, it's about survival. It controls the bodies of vital functions such as heart rate, breathing, body temperature, balance, sleep, eat, and hydration. It's really, really reliable, but tends to be rigid and compulsive. It's a really low fuel part of our brain. It still functions while we're asleep. Okay? If a car drove too close to us, you'd feel this go off. When it goes off, it floods us with adrenaline. It does great things to help survival, like increase heart rate, expand your lungs. It gets us ready to fight or run or be still. And most of you have heard of the fight, flight choice. Well, there's a third one: fight, flight, or freeze. Okay. Secondly, the limbic part of the brain, okay, is about emotion or belonging, which first appeared in mammals. It records memories of behaviors that produce agreeable or disagreeable experiences. It's responsible for emotions, okay? And its main structures are the hippocampus, the amygdala, and the hypothalamus. It's the seat of value judgment. And value judgments are things that we make often unconsciously, exerting an influence on our behavior. And this is where learning takes place, particularly in the hippocampus. Memory is embedded, initially recorded, and then pushed to long-term memory. Learning is something we do all the time, okay? Learning new safety processes, safety systems, new people we work with, working in new environments, okay? The other thing we need to know is the hippocampus is our brain's learning area, and is really, really sensitive to stress. So if we are under a lot of stress, a lot of pressure, the hippocampus gets less effective. It doesn't function as well. So our learning obviously is hampered, is impaired. Converse to that, at the same time, the amygdala, and I'll talk to you more about the amygdala later, it's one of my favorite body parts, it gets more effective when we're under stress, okay? Safe to say, when we're under stress, we get more trigger happy and reactive to all kinds of stimuli. Our ability to adapt, cope, decreases. Okay, so the third part, and I'm sure most of you have heard of this part, the prefrontal cortex, okay? It's the thinking brain, or focused on becoming. It's really responsible for higher order functioning: language, abstract thought, consciousness, decision making, imagination, and planning. If I said 20 times 20, you've already worked out the answer. 40 times 40, you've worked out the answer. Okay. So this is the part we need in ourselves, our employees, our direct reports, to focus on safety and the task at hand. We need them to be functioning with their prefrontal cortex really, really optimally. Okay. So I just want to pause here. Some of you may be asking, why are we talking about feelings and emotions? Well, emotion is critical to understand behavior because it predominantly initiates behavior. The feeling part of the brain kicks in before the thinking part. Okay, so the reptilian limbic system kick in before the prefrontal cortex. Okay, the limbic system is primitive. It's activated at a non or subconscious level, while the neocortex allows more conscious awareness and active decision making. Our brains are set up in such a way that we're able to process emotional responses without having to draw on thought processing and consider them rational. We just respond. This is what makes our brains efficient and able to process multiple things at once. However, in negative or uncomfortable emotional states, stress, anger, fear, worry, being preoccupied, the survival part of the brain kicks in and operates more, activating fight or flight or freeze. And we can act in less rational or less desirable ways, less ways that are influenced by the prefrontal cortex. Okay? On the other hand, in a more positive emotional state, being relaxed or calm, we're able to tap into the thinking part of our brain and make more rational and conscious decisions for behavior. So we know, for example, individuals who have a greater level of resilience have a stronger neural pathway between the amygdala and a part of the prefrontal cortex. Okay, so we're going to yeah. So the thing is, the three parts of this of our brain here, the prefrontal cortex, limbic, and the reptilian system, talk to each other really, really well, except in times of threat and uncertainty. Remember, the brain's job is to keep us safe. Its overarching organizing principle is to classify the world around us into things that will either hurt us or help us stay alive, things that will threaten us or reward us. So let's call this principle 1, okay? I'm just going to go through here. Okay, I said I'd come back to one of my favorite parts of the body. This is the amygdala. Okay, the other thing about the brain is it likes predictability. Okay, so let's call this principle 2. The amygdala is part of the limbic system and is essentially like the bouncer or security guard of the nightclub. What do? Their primary role is to look out for threats. Okay, same with the amygdala. It looks out for threat. The interesting thing about the part, the interesting thing about this part of the brain is we have 5 more neurons dedicated to threat responses than to any other type of responses. So we notice threats more quickly. Evolutionarily, if we did not respond to threat or change, we wouldn't have survived. So it's become normal for us to view change as threatening. We're really biologically wired to do so. If you think back to caveman and cavewoman days, if cavewoman said to caveman, "Nice hairdo," caveman didn't need to react quickly. But if cavewoman said to caveman, "There's a woolly, hairy mammoth over there and it's coming straight for us," caveman would need to react quickly. Okay, so it's how we've evolved. So let's now talk about the workplace. In the workplace, that's what our brain is doing. It's being vigilant. It's classifying our environment into things that will either hurt us or help us stay alive, things that will threaten us or reward us. Okay? It's on the lookout for threat. The thing is organizational change in work routine, change in safety routine, change in instructions, styles of leadership, team dynamics can all be perceived as threat. It's different from status quo. Remember, principle 2, the brain likes predictability. Okay, so what happens when our brain perceives a threat? Well, it releases cortisol, the stress hormone. It stops us from thinking clearly and suppresses the production of the good stuff, the serotonin, the oxytocin, the dopamine. It is this good stuff that we need to fuel the prefrontal cortex to work in order to help us and those we lead or influence make good safety decisions or speak up about safety, okay? What happens then? Well, the limbic system and the prefrontal cortex usually communicate to each other really well, except in times of threat. Cortisol affects how the prefrontal cortex functions. Remember, the prefrontal cortex is about thinking, planning, decision-making, controlling our emotional reactions. Because the amygdala overrides the functions of the prefrontal cortex, our logical self is no longer available. The amygdala hijacks the prefrontal cortex. So that's what I'm suggesting happened to those two middle-aged men that day. Okay, so let's keep moving on. And when the amygdala hijacks the prefrontal cortex, we're in a threat state. And the threat state is in the red towards the right-hand side of the screen. And in the threat state, we are disengaged. We're on automatic pilot, okay? We're not necessarily thinking and making the best decisions. On the other hand, positive emotional states activate a reward response. In a state of positive emotion, the brain's processing is freed up, allowing for greater access to resources related to thinking, attention, openness in thinking, greater insight into alternative options, perspectives, fewer perceptual errors, fewer judgment areas, enhanced judgment, better decision making, and better action. The benefit of this is that people are in a better state for more rational decisions. Okay? They're in a better state to make more rational, considered decisions relating to risk and safety. So I ask you now, which state do you want your direct reports to be in to make the best safety decisions? Those that you influence, those that you lead, those that you engage, those that you have those safety conversations with. Yeah, and the answer is we want to keep themselves, so we want to keep ourselves and them in an engage and reward state so that they make better safety choices and they're feeling a little bit more confident about speaking up. Okay, so let's move on here. Okay, a little bit more of this brain stuff. When the amygdala hijacks the prefrontal cortex, we move toward a threat state. Okay, over here towards the left, where we're distracted, anxious, stress, reduced memory, decreased performance and engagement and motivation. Okay, when the amygdala hijacks the prefrontal cortex, we move towards a threat state rather than a reward state. In a threat state, the prefrontal cortex is less effective. In a reward state, the prefrontal cortex is more effective. I ask you, where is your best thinking done? And what state do you want to be in to make the best safety decisions in this reward state? And in what state are you most comfortable about expressing an opinion, about speaking up? Let's face it, we all know that speaking up is important. It's the cost that we evaluate. And the cost is about fear. People will speak up in an environment where there is no fear of reprisals. Think about over the last 12 months, the Me Too movement, the Hong Kong protesters wearing masks, royal commissions, the whistleblower policy. You know, at work, we fear we may lose our jobs. We may be isolated. We may not get that promotion. We may not be part of the inner circle. We fear we may impact productivity, production. Okay, so how do we create an environment that we fear no reprisals and we feel comfortable about speaking up? And it's here, I think it's up to leaders, managers, safety professionals to create this environment. Okay, those of you or us who are parents, think about it. We want to create a safe environment for our kids to tell us what's on their mind. Okay, no different to us leading or talking to people about safety. We want to know what's on their mind. Okay, so how do we remain in this reward state? Okay, so before we get to this answer, I want to talk a little bit more about the brain science stuff. And I want to talk about a model called the SCARF model. Okay, and the SCARF model centers around 3 core themes or ideas and is based on neuroscience research. Okay, my rough translation of these themes are: 1, under threat, our ability to solve problems or make good decisions or interact with others is decreased. When we are in a reward state, our abilities are enhanced. Okay, and we've talked about this one already. Number 2, social threats are perceived by the brain with the same intensity as actual physical threats. So somebody excluding me, making a comment on my Facebook page, on my Instagram feed, on my social media sites, we all it lights up the same areas of the brain as physical threats do. So social threats activate the brain in the same way as physical threats do. Okay, so let's call that principle 3. Now, point 3, the threat response or the desire to avoid pain is more common and always outweighs the desire to seek pleasure. Okay, thus, the more pain we can avoid in social situations, the more effective we can be. So let's call this principle 4. These are themes that unconsciously determine how we interact with others. Okay, researchers like Rosa Carrillo in 2012 showed showed support for this same thinking through the complexity management theory and relationship psychology, that people's interactions and relationship with others, as well as others' core social needs, are strong predictors of safety behavior. Also, another researcher, Ralph Adolphs, in 2003, talked about how these people's interactions and relationships can adversely impact good decision making, risk taking, judgment, and attention. Okay, so if we go back to David Rock's SCARF model and these 3 core themes, in the context of safety leadership, knowing these 3 themes is relevant not just for our own conduct, but for how we impart our safety message to others, because this is what the brain needs to remain in the reward state. Okay, so what we're going to do now is pragmatize some of this theory I've talked about, and see how we can actually start to apply it. So I've talked about the SCARF model, and you can see from the screen towards the left is away, we're in a threat state. Towards right, green is towards state where we're engaged. The prefrontal cortex is activated more so. So this is the SCARF model, stands for status, certainty, autonomy, relatedness, and fairness. We're going to talk a little bit about each of them and then some practical ways we can actually implement it. In a nutshell, the status domain means that we are constantly evaluating our own importance relative to others. If our brain perceives others are more important than us, they can be perceived as a threat. This is not just in regard to position or hierarchy. It can also be in regard to knowledge or information. So whilst your own status as a manager, leader, safety manager, safety advisor may keep you safe, okay, you have a delicate balancing act of always being on the lookout for opportunities to elevate the status of your staff or those that follow you, okay, those that you supervise, those that report to you, either real or perceived. Remember, social threats react the same way as physical threats. So without making them feel like they're left behind. So about being inclusive here, okay? And here, using words like our team rather than my team, using terms like we and us rather than they, really have an impact. While these may seem like really minor semantics, they really do have a huge impact on how people perceive themselves relative to you. And we know this from functional MRIs, where we've measured blood flow in the brain to certain parts of the brain when we use words like this. Okay. So while they seem like minor semantics, they really do have a huge impact. So you know situations yourself when you felt some relief, when you became more informed about something at work. Okay, now I know. As a leader, you have the opportunity to provide some of that relief to your team members as well. Okay, certainty. As you'd expect, the social dimension of certainty is about being able to predict the future, or at least to have a sense of assurance about what the future holds. In some cases, certainty can give us pleasure, but more often than not, it's a lack of certainty that brings us pain. Employees want to know they are safe or what they've been asked to do is safe. The brain likes predictability. That was principle 2. Okay, giving people certainty about work tasks, methods, routines, how things are done, where tools are kept, enhances their certainty. This is why change in a work procedure can cause so much angst. Okay, openness is really important here. Openness helps with certainty. What I mean by openness is about communication, and there's several forms of communication. Okay, not just email and text. And those times where you don't have anything solid to communicate, then say, I don't have anything solid at the moment. But as soon as I do, I will. Or if you say, I don't have anything now, I may have it by Tuesday. Then on Tuesday, go back to them and say, I said I'd get back to you today. Sorry, I still don't have anything. So it's really important because they want that certainty. They want to know that you're going to commit to that certainty. That's what the brain wants, that predictability. Okay. So if we move on to the third point here, autonomy. While the domain of certainty is about predicting the future, autonomy is about having a sense of control over it. It could be control over events, over the work we are doing, or even the choices we make. In simple terms, the more choices you can give people, then the higher level or feeling of autonomy is likely to be. More autonomy is pleasurable, less autonomy is painful. Ask employees how best this job could be done safely. What are their choices? Allows them to give you some feedback and a greater sense of being in control. Autonomy can also be about empowering team members to solve their own problems. Empowerment can come about by offering yourself as a sounding board while they explore the options, then inviting them to go away and make decisions themselves based on their reflection. Okay, so the fourth one here is relatedness. And relatedness essentially equates to a sense of belonging and safety. Okay, are you a friend or foe? Do I feel part of this group or not? Ultimately, do I feel safe and trusted, or do I feel threatened and not trusted? The critical function of any leader is to create a culture of trust, trust, friendliness, and confidence. And we talk about this as psychological safety. Do the people you work with, the people you lead, influence, feel safe to share their thoughts, feelings, and expectations, and views about what's working and what's not working? Are they encouraged to do so without recrimination or backlash? Okay. Do you cultivate a sense of friendliness as you move about your work environment? Do you engage with your team members? Do you know their partner's names, something about them, their football team, their hobbies, their interests, something so that you connect with their life outside of work? Okay. Do you acknowledge them publicly about work well done or for affirming conduct? We inherently mirror each other. We have these things called mirror neurons, okay? And essentially, it's about mirroring what we see. So this is really important for those in leadership positions and leadership status. So if you want to cultivate an environment speaking up, it needs to start with you, okay? They need to see you doing that. And the fifth concept here of fairness. While it might well be true that life isn't fair, it doesn't mean that it's not a value worth pursuing. In regard to safety and speaking up, this boils down to really the concept of having fair exchange between people, having the same set of rules and expectations of each other. Equally, fairness applies to reward and recognition. Do team members get acknowledgement commensurate with their safety actions? Or do you favour some team members over others? And really, when you're talking about safety moments, make it genuine and specific. Make it as detailed as possible about the minutiae, okay? So that they know you're not just saying it. You've paid attention to some of the detail and the consequences. The more detailed it can be, the more it'll activate some aspect of their prefrontal cortex, okay? So a general, if we talk about it as a general thank you, thanks for that. Thanks for making the effort to send me an additional email about the workshop we just ran. Really appreciate the effort that you put in there. Very detailed. Okay, so in summary, if we think of the SCARF model as a way of being rather than a tool as such, we can literally apply it anywhere in the business context, even in life for that matter, to be more influential and collaborative. My challenge to you today and throughout this, and also at the end, is to be more SCARF aware. That is, ask yourself, as part of your safety role, did I leave that person feeling more pain or more pleasure than when I found them? If you are SCARF aware, the chances are the people you lead are moving toward a reward state and making better safety choices, including speaking up about issues that are important. Okay, so we're going to move on here a little bit more. And I want to talk about what you can do as an organization or leader to help you minimize threat and maximize reward, to get the most out of your people and grow a positive safety culture. So implementing concepts like these is one step in the right direction. So I thought I'd talk here about some pro-SCARF actions, so some things you can do more favorably. And I want to use the acronym CAR, C-A-R, certainty, autonomy, relatedness, CAR. Okay, so certainty from the SCARF model. Well, uncertainty is what causes us grief. Principle 2. Our brain likes predictability. Uncertainty is worse than a known bad. We can have strong multiple uncertainties. Reduced certainty produces an error response in the brain, diverting attention to the error and away from the vital information processing paths, decision-making, appraisals. Okay, so we need to create a certainty buffer. We could do things like establish and articulate a clearer safety vision that makes sure it connects with goals, expectations, objectives, targets, indicators, and communicate this really clearly. Okay, provides sufficient information about job description, roles, expectations, break tasks down into smaller tasks, chunk it down. Our brain likes things in chunks. Okay, disseminate information quickly and efficiently, use open and transparent communication about the 2 points. Do what you say you're going to do here. Okay, make concepts more explicit to reduce ambiguity in messages. Okay, and the second one I said we'll talk about is autonomy or reduced autonomy. So what we need to do here is try to create more autonomy. Remember, a threat to autonomy activates stress and a threat response with associated decrease in performance. So here, some of the things we could contemplate are low autonomy can be alleviated through increased status or recognition or certainty. Acknowledge publicly, make it specific and detailed, outline the expectations for a safety role, but allow autonomy in some decision-making, strategizing, and implementing for how to achieve this. Avoid micromanagement. We all know what we feel like when we're micromanaged. Allow employees the opportunity to offer ideas, input, or feedback into the design of safety programs and strategies. Allow for input. Allow people to personalize or set up their own workspace and some degree of flexibility. Okay. The third aspect here is relatedness. And I think this is probably the most important of all these. Okay, remember, people who feel like they don't belong will experience uncomfortable emotional states, threat, while a sense of belonging enhances comfortable emotional states, reward. Okay, some things here we can do is, what's your plan for connecting with people? How are you going to get to know them? Shared goals are more important than ever here. What's another way you can support them? Okay, how can you increase some positive social connections at work? How can you increase some mateship, belongingness? How can you encourage an environment where anything is debated without humiliation or recrimination? Encourage high levels of cooperation rather than competition. Set expectations whereby staff behave respectfully toward each other, respect their values and views, opinions, and support each other. Some organizations have talked about a buddy system, mentoring, coaching, small action groups, holding informal meetings, storytelling. These are all examples that clients we've worked with have identified. So again, in my effort to continue to pragmatize some of this theory, I want to talk a little bit about some brain safety conversations. So this is about what you can do as a safety leader to help minimize threat and maximize reward to get the most out of those you lead and grow a positive safety culture. So implementing some of these is really a step in the right direction. So some of these brain safety conversations are, when you're tempted to say, let's get started, how about how are things going? We all know what needs to be done. Let's clarify our aims for today. Why are you focused on that? What is a good outcome for today? So as you can see a pattern here on the right-hand side, we're asking open-ended questions. We're trying to elicit some response. We're trying to engage them. We're trying to ask for their thinking. We're trying to ask for their prefrontal cortex to be stimulated, to be kicked off. We're trying to jumpstart it. We know what our current challenges are. Where are we in the planning here? Here's what we should prioritize. What do we need to get done? Even if you know what it is you need to get done. Asking the question. We don't have time for others now. Who else would add value here? Remember, this is about inclusiveness as well, because feeling excluded is a social threat. Social threats register in the brain the same way as physical threats and have the same consequences. Let's move these ideas forward. Which tasks are each of us owning? We have information we need. Is there anything we might be missing? Let's get this done today. Let's reach out and support each other today. Oh, sorry, let me just go back one more. These are certainly some of the things, these are some of the conversations that we can start with, okay? So you've seen this before. I guess I'm starting to wind up now. Hopefully, you've seen today some strong scientific arguments for ways to lead the brain safely towards healthier, better, and safe decisions. As Sarah certainly said at the start, my influence as a psychologist is really around the neuroscience concepts, and we're learning more and more about that from functional MRIs and also the positive psychology concepts. So what positive psychology is if we look at a continuum of negative 10 to plus 10, traditional psychology is about minus 10 to 0. It's about fixing or getting better. Positive psychology is about strengths, is between 0 to 10, so making stronger, making better, enhancing, okay? So really from the brain science, we've seen today what influences our behavior towards or away from something in our environment. And because of this, safety leaders should be in a better position to create workplaces for those they lead to foster more positive emotional states and more optimal cognitive functioning. Safety leaders can really integrate the principles of SCARF into established safety culture and management systems, and hopefully enhance their willingness of people to collaborate towards a safety culture. If individuals see that organizations and leaders do not really care about safety, then the principles of social neuroscience, what we talked about today, will come to the fore. We'll just take over, and people will feel in this threatened state where they're not part of it. Okay, they're not part of the group, and most people will not risk exclusion from the group to lead the safety battle alone, when it is more emotionally comfortable and psychologically safer to follow the group and retain in-group status. Okay. Conversely, modeling appropriate safety intentions and behaviors will maximize the likelihood of your followers, your direct reports, mirroring these behaviors. So really, if you want to lead a safety culture, attending to these SCARF domains is really critical. Okay, doing so will provide a strong foundation, I think, for developing and sustaining a positive safety culture. Again, if we think of the SCARF model as a way of being rather than as a tool, we can literally apply it anywhere in the business context, or even in life for that matter, to be more influential and collaborative. So again, my challenge to you, I've said this a couple of times, I'll wind up with this. My challenge to you is to be SCARF aware. That is, ask yourself as part of your safety role, did I leave that person feeling more pain or more pleasure than when I found them? If you are SCARF aware, the chances are the people you lead, you're giving their brains some love and some comfort, and they're moving towards that engaged state, okay? And they're making better safety choices Well, that really concludes my effort. Just one final thing I want to say is that I just want to confirm that now both middle-aged men do have their skipper's ticket and are certainly making better safety decisions, much to their partner's satisfaction. So thank you for your time. And we in the handout there'll be my reference list of articles, videos, or books that have helped me comprise this presentation. So certainly happy for you to call me on the toll-free number or email me, Lloyd, Lloyd, at working-life.net, and happy to have a chat with you a little bit further about this. Thank you. Cheers, Sarah.
Thank you very much for that, Lloyd. Certainly a lot of interest there. We've done quite a few webinars on this sort of psychological topic recently. So I have put a link there in the chat for a link to all our previous and future webinars. The previous ones, those links all have recordings in there. As I said earlier, we'll email a full recording of this video and podcast out later today. And you can also check that link because the recording will be on the link that I've just posted. So thank you very much, Lloyd. There doesn't appear to be any questions, but every time I say this, there then appears a question. So we just have to hold on. There's always a chance that won't happen. Just hold on for a couple of seconds.
No problem.
But yeah, I think you definitely covered that very well. So perhaps there aren't any questions. And I will stress that if they do have one, they can email you, and we'll put that email address on the email
Sure.
send out again later today. So thank you everyone for joining us, and thank you, Lloyd. That was fantastic. And just a quick bit of feedback, because it's come in the form of a question. He said, just thank you, Lloyd, for a great presentation. And that's from Dwayne. So
Thank you, Dwayne.
have a great day, everyone. Thank you.
Cheers. Thank you for your
Bye-bye.
time. Bye-bye.